Digging through all of the videos that we can find on Donald Trump, there is yet to be a good pros and cons list. I'm seeing that there is a lot of people who very much hate Trump to the point in which we have seen someone attempt an assassination on him. This is something that we cannot allow, whether or not this person is on this side, that side, or whatever side. It is not okay. But how has someone become this enraged with someone like this? Is it due to some of the things that he does, or is it due to this belief that has been spun up around who he is? Let's get into it. Pro number one, he's willing to test his ideas in front of all sides. He's willing to go to some of these places, such as the Libertarian National Convention, where he was berated with booze, and he is willing to put his ideas to the test to see if it is something that not only do the people agree with, but is it actually something that makes sense for America. He's someone who's willing to test all of his beliefs, which is truly something in today's time that is a big feather in the cap. So this is something I thought was perfect to place as the first pro. This first pro leads us into the first con. He is someone who attacks people on things that they really can't change. He's someone who will throw out personal attacks, and this is definitely something that leads to a lot of people being very insulted, even if it wasn't targeted specifically at them. It is something that they could carry on to feel makes them a little bit insecure. So it is totally understandable when he attacks people based on character traits or just personal looks. It is not great. He should be going after the ideas in which he disagrees if he wants to actually see a problem being resolved. Pro number two, he is a very powerful speaker who actually somehow, some way is able to create a union amongst some of these other powerful leaders and somehow, some way create a lot of peace amongst the earth. It is something that a lot of American leaders nowadays aren't great at. There's no real beneficial financial gain when you are someone who is going against war, because a lot of these people who are building the equipment for war will pay you big sums of money if you speak good on them, or at least push them into a possibility of using those tools that they are actually creating. Con number two is he allows his ego to bleed into some of his speeches, so the message doesn't always get delivered. A lot of people get very, very irritated when they hear someone consistently always talking about, oh, me, I, or basically just taking all the credit for things that should be spread out amongst the whole United States. Some powerful speakers, such as a Obama, for instance, is someone who is great at bringing people together through his speeches. Of course, this is something that is a great trait to have when you are a politician. So this being the con number two makes a lot of sense. Pro number three. This one can help every single human, whether or not you are at the top of the food chain of making money or if you're at the bottom. He is looking to fix corruption. This is something that is very, very easy to see if you are someone that is in today's time. You see that some things are much, much harder to get due to different people pushing for different products to be increased on prices and all of that. not so fun things. He definitely has a great plan to fix the corruption, but it leads us into the con. He is someone who has made some false promises in his last term. He has said that he was going to, quote unquote, drain the swamp, which, for anyone that is looking for a quick summary of what that is supposed to mean, someone like Hillary was actually accused and basically proven to have done a lot of corrupt things. Or someone like a Nancy Pelosi, for better example, has been able to cook the books, they say, and has been able to financially benefit off other people's struggles. So this has been a false promise of his when he said that he was actually going to go after these individuals for these different crimes they have committed. And it almost gave opportunity for him to be hit with a lot of the charges he is now hit with. There is this thing that I want to play right now.
We have proven that we can actually be civil to each other. In fact, just before taking the dais, Hillary accidentally bumped into me, and she very civilly said, "Pardon me." And I very politely replied, "Let me talk to you about that after I get into office."
As you can see, he joked on Hillary where he was saying that he could hit her with a lot of charges. Basically, the joke that he just said was that she bumped into him and then she asked to be pardoned. She supposedly was accused of about 39 different felony counts, and somehow, some way, she skated off on that one. Trump ended up getting hit with, I believe, 39 felony charges, which resulted in him being actually convicted of these. So this was something that I almost thought was just terrible on his part. The fact that he gave room for someone to use his kindness for weakness. That is not a great trait of someone who is supposed to be the world leader, the person who is in charge of the whole free world. Pro number four. Pro number four is that he can definitely help us with the financial struggle we have been placed into. Of course, at the end of his term, we were hit with some very big financial struggles that related to us not being able to work and all of that was coming with coronavirus. But it is definitely a fact that he is a business-minded individual who has the very good ability to make some money. So that is something that will rub off on the rest of America. When one top dog is making a lot of money, it gives a lot of people that kick in the butt they need to go out there and be motivated to chase things down and conquer different things. There is a very important competitive nature that humans need so they can get themselves away from being so focused on the different dramatic responses they might get for this and that. So having that competitive nature and having the ability to help people make money is going to be huge in why a lot of people are actually going to vote for him. I truly believe a lot of people are going to vote for him due to how high food prices have been raised and just inflation is taking over to this point that people are no longer going to let emotions make their decisions for them. I think a lot of people financially need a Trump. They need someone who is not going to submit to these greater powers because he already has the funds that he does not need to be bribed. He actually almost could never be bribed because he already could be the person in the reverse position of bribing others. So as bad as that is to say, I think that that is a huge pro for him due to the factor of him just being comfortable. He's not in a position where he's going to be having to risk it for that biscuit. He's definitely already in a position where he can focus in on the things that are actually going to financially strengthen the average Joe, the person that isn't already made, the small business owner who is looking to actually help the ones around them. There's a lot of these big businesses who are great. They're very great when it comes to commercializing America, but it's not going to actually help the average Joe, as I said.
One major flaw that a lot of people actually overlook is Trump actually funded the war in Yemen. This was something that was obviously very, very bad. And a lot of people overlook this and they give him a lot of credit for being a very peaceful person. But he did actually veto the attempts for people to stop the war. Of course, a lot of people might push back on this and might say that there is other reasons that aren't mentioned, but this is something that we have to mention as one of the cons. I truly believe this is not a good look for him. Whether or not he was intending on this being something that completely continued the war is a conversation I would love to hear, but it is definitely something that caused a lot of chaos, that really caused a lot of pain for the world. Moving on to pro number 5. Somehow, someway, he's been able to make both sides come together and has actually had a lot of Democrats switch over to voting for him even after being lifelong Democrats. A lot of people will also look at the other side and say that people have switched over from being Republicans to voting for the Democratic side, but it doesn't appear like that is very much going to happen this time around. More happened in his first attempt, and there's a lot of reasons that play into a lot of the Republicans looking at him to be a bad guy before, but a lot of them have switched over and have actually came to grips on the benefits he plays in this whole game. That leads us to the next big con, and this one actually led him to get a felony charge. This is him having involvement in some shady past business. Some will say that it was overkilled by them trying to just use the system against him, which leads us into the next pro for him, is they actually they weaponized the legal system against him, but some of that shady business in the past did catch up to him, but it's also something we don't fully know about. He definitely is someone who has been at the top of the financial food chain for a long period of time, which usually takes a lot of risk and takes a lot of cutting people's throats. So one of these situations is apparently him overestimating the appraisal on a certain spot called Mar-a-Lago, which in the bigger picture is definitely an overkill. A lot of people would say that they used the legal system against him, which leads us to the next one of them using the legal system against him. And this pro right here truthfully seems to be a huge play on why people are now voting for him. He seems to have gained a lot of traction in urban communities. It seems that there has been a lot of support coming towards him because people see the system has gone to limits that they don't feel comfortable supporting. And this is definitely something in the bigger picture that will very much give him a lot of rope to be able to show the flaws in the whole system. This leads us on to another con that really separates him from some of the voters. This is him being known as somewhat of a womanizer. He's someone who has actual crimes against him where people are saying that he's done this, saying he's done that, and it is definitely something that puts a big stain on his reputation when it comes to females. A lot of females are not going to support someone who has been convicted of certain crimes, even though Biden has been accused of all sorts of sexual assaults and things that very much are thrown under the carpet and pretended aren't there. So it's a tricky one. People call him a womanizer because of the way he speaks about women. The woman he's married to is extremely beautiful. She's someone who doesn't appear to make a lot of sense for him to be married to. So there's a lot of things that people look at in that situation of him being a so-called womanizer that people would hold against him, and it definitely takes away a lot of his chances of getting a vote from a woman who hasn't done a lot of research on if it is actually a fact, if he's someone who is against them. Let's say it like that. This moves us on to a very, very important pro. He will call out anyone. He is not too scared of the repercussions that someone will bring him, whether or not it is someone that's going to use their race, their gender, all of these different things that have no real credibility when it comes to actually forming opinions. He is someone who will look past those things and still will call people out for their misdeeds. And this is huge. A lot of people will skip over this, and it is huge. It does lead us on to one of his cons, and he gets emotional. Let's say it like this. Even though he's willing to call out anyone and cast stones at anyone, he definitely will be very emotional in some of his responses, which leads a lot of people to be bewildered on how he is someone of this high level of power. A lot of people of that power are able to turn the cheek and kind of roll with the punches, so to speak. He is someone who is definitely going to fire back, and he's not going to allow someone to bully him. It is a huge plus for America right now have been very feminized and are willing to allow people to bully them into submission and make people have become a little bit softer. Let's say it easier. So he gets emotional. This is definitely not a huge con, but it is definitely something that people very much use as a reason to not like him. He is definitely someone who will answer back in a very blunt, somewhat dramatic way, which is going to incite potential violence. It's going to incite a lot of responses that isn't going to be super beneficial for everyone. This pro that we're going to be speaking on now kind of ties into the willing to call anyone out pro, but this one is that he is willing to take on topics that most would avoid, whether or not it is the border, whether or not it is China buying up a lot of farmland, or any of these issues that the average Joe is going to be very curious and maybe even frightened on. He's willing to speak on it in a way that is very understandable for the people. It is something that people very much want to hear, and he does it in a very interesting way that is going to capture people's attention and make some people who weren't aware before open their eyes to seeing the potential danger of what is coming tomorrow, or what is already being built up in the darkness today. This one leads us to a very important con he isn't very well read. So when he is trying to make an argument behind certain topics that everyone wants him to speak on, it leads him into a position where he sometimes shoots himself in the foot by talking about it in a way that isn't going to be fully respected by the suits and the people who have gone to school to study some of these different things. A lot of people do not look at him as a politician because of the way that he kind of stumbles through some of his speeches and kind of bases things on feelings, not fully on facts. He's not the most well-read person, which leads to a lot of inconveniences for the listener. Pro number 9. He speaks in a way that is very understandable for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're on this elite bachelor level of education, whatever the highest level of education is. As you can see, I'm not one of those people who's on an unreal level of education, but I'm able to put things in words where the average Joe is going to understand. And I think that is crucial when you are trying to target wider audiences. Of course, there's going to be select few people who want you to say things in a certain way to actually make them feel comfortable with you being the person in charge. But it is also a huge feather in your cap when you're able to break things down and almost dumb things down in a way that everyone is going to understand, whether or not they are at the top, the bottom, the middle, wherever the hell they are. People will understand every single word that comes out of his mouth. This leads us into con number 9. He buys into some conspiracies and is supposedly someone who pushes around a lot of lies. This is something that is going to play into not being super well read. At the end of the day, when you aren't fully well read, when you are more of a street smart individual, there's a lot of room for you to be wrong, and there's a lot of people who would love to prove you wrong and make you look like a absolute fool so they can discredit any potential examples you ever have of why people should do this or do that. There is going to be a lot of haters when you are someone at that high of a political level, and it makes a lot of sense. You're someone that has a lot of power. You need to be criticized, and he definitely is criticized, but he also is someone who kind of buys into some conspiracies. He's very much open to hearing different things through, when sometimes some people might be feeding him those fun tales so they can manipulate him in a certain way that is going to be beneficial for their organization and terrible for America. So this is something I felt was very, very important to note throughout this whole list of cons. Pro number 10. In my opinion, this one is the most important and somehow the one that I see getting overlooked today. This one is who is actually valuing the success of America. This is something that he very much values. This is something that he puts at the front of all of his ideas. It is something that he always is pushing for, whether or not people agree with his overall aims of what he is trying to push for and his attempt to make it back to the successful empire that it was. He definitely is someone who is pushing to create longevity and success for everyone in the United States, even his worst enemies. He's definitely making the country a better place to live. So whether or not some people just very much viciously hate him is kind of irrelevant to if he is actually the right guy to take on a leadership position. He is someone who is very much equipped to be a leader because he is very very much going to take into mind what is going to be beneficial for the people. And a lot of the people are very much only worrying about what's going to help their pockets. He actually wants to see some success for people all over this country, because it is in turn going to very much make times a little bit more easy to live for him. So some people might look at that as a selfish reasoning for why he wants to better the country. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what his real reasoning is, as long as it is pure and it is actually going to be something that's going to benefit everyone. So he definitely is someone who wants to take credit for all of these different things that he's not fully the only one that should be taking credit for. It's very irrelevant. He definitely is someone who wants to see good for you. He wants to see good for me. And it's obvious through his actual actions. When we look at the other side, we look at the other candidate going up against him right now. This is someone who's very much shown that they are a selfish person, and they're continuously always talking about how they are selfless, how Biden has been selfless.
He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president.
We can't see any actions to prove that. So it's blowing smoke up our behinds. It's not reality. It is total gaslighting that is scary to actually take witness to. So when we see someone like Trump that is very on point and very much showing that he's trying to help us, we have to take that help. We have to actually understand what it is. So it's definitely something that we can use as a role model of what not to do when it comes to the other stances he takes and all that, whatever. But it is definitely someone who fits the mold for what we need for a better tomorrow. So this is very important. This is a huge pro, and this is something I felt was best to save, best for last. Of course, it does lead us into a con. This con is that he actually was in huge support of the whole coronavirus situation. He was the one who first was in the position of power when it all started to spill over, and he still kept Fauci in the position of what ended up causing a lot of pain. So this is definitely something that he really has to take responsibility for. I believe he has taken responsibility for it. I can show a clip right now.
But I didn't know anybody in Washington. And I had to rely on people to give me names. And many were really good. I mean, Bob Lighthizer, I had great trade people. I had some great people. But I also picked people that, in retrospect, I wouldn't have picked. But now I know the smart ones, the dumb ones, the weak ones, the solid ones, the ones like you. I know the people. I know everybody, sort of like everybody. And we're going to have a great government. I didn't know. I had to rely on people I'd ask, I don't want to use names because I don't want to embarrass, they're not bad people, but I'd ask people that were rhinos, who do you recommend for such and such a position? All important positions. And they'd recommend some people that were rhinos or something, or weak or not good.
And yes, this definitely isn't necessarily him saying he apologizes. It isn't what we want to hear, but it is something that we aren't hearing from the other side. And the other side would gaslight us to make us believe that we were seeing things and that our mind was playing tricks on us to even think that that was a situation that was happening. We would have been made to believe we are the fools. We were made to believe that none of it is reality. So at least when we have someone who is going to tell us how it is, whether or not we're going to want to hear it in that certain way, is what we need. Our feelings do not matter right now. Our feelings are not going to help us stay alive. So only the strong survive. I hope we actually are able to make the right decision in this up and coming election. Do I have full faith that it's going to happen? I don't know. I have no clue. I don't want to cast doubt upon the country that I'm in at the moment, but I see a lot of room for people to almost pray us into failure. So much love and respect to anyone that's actually casting a vote in this upcoming election. I hope people can see that bringing us together is going to be much more valuable than playing this weird game of drama, trying to create issues for each other, trying to make everything a little bit weirder for people that actually have a lot of things in common. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot more things in common if you are looking at these average Joes than you are going to have with any of these goody two-shoe politicians who want to absolutely cut your throat to see a little bit more change get added into their bank account. So much love and respect. I hope this was something that people actually enjoyed watching.